This webinar is the first of a webinar series designed to empower nonprofit organizations such as yourself with the right tool that help you make greater impact in our communities. For those that do not know me, my name is Gary Serious. I am a new senior account executive at SparkRock. I actually recently joined the company 8 months ago, but I have been in the ERP space for quite some time, more than a decade, helping both non-for-profit and for-profit organizations to find the right solution and manage and automate their processes when it comes to finance and HR. And the more I work with non-for-profit organizations, the more I wanted those to become my main focus. And this is how I end up working with SparkRock, because it gave me the opportunity to do just that. And I'm sure I will have the opportunity to talk to many of you. As you know, we are a Microsoft business partner and work very closely with Microsoft Social Impact team. So before we get to the main content, I want to pass it over to Brian Allen from Microsoft to kick things off and talk a little bit about the amazing work that they do for nonprofit. Please welcome Brian.
Thank you, Gary. I appreciate the introduction, and thanks everyone for joining the call. Microsoft is extremely excited to be aligned with SparkRock to talk about how we empower organizations to achieve more. So I think the best place to start is by describing Microsoft's mission. Microsoft's mission is really to empower every person in the organization on the planet to achieve more. And in order to do that, they created the Microsoft Tech for Social Impact to provide discounted and granted software to nonprofits so that they can accelerate mission outcomes. Now, one of the things we learned early on is that in order for organizations to really take advantage of the offerings that Microsoft had, they had to have access to affordable technology. And so we worked, Microsoft, that is, worked with partners and others within the organization to stand up a technology or nonprofit sector channel so that our partners can engage with our customers where they are likely to intersect, and that is around the technology solutions and offers that enables them to achieve more. You can go to the next slide, Gary. And to put things in perspective about the impact that Microsoft has had in the nonprofit sector, there are a couple of bullet points that I really wanted to introduce you to. If you haven't heard about the Tech for Social Impact, I think this will be, kind of an astounding set of figures to kind of like relay to you. Number one, and this is going off of a previous fiscal year, Microsoft has provided more than $3.2 billion in discounted and granted software to nonprofit organizations. And discounted software means exactly what it says, that is software that's been reduced in price so that nonprofit organizations can access them and take advantage of them. The second category that I mentioned was granted software, and this is simply free software that Microsoft provides to nonprofit organizations that meet the eligibility criteria. And you'll be happy to know that to date we've supplied more than we have more than 332,000 organizations around the world accessing discounted and granted software from Microsoft. Now, that's just a drop in the bucket to the number of organizations that we potentially want to reach. We do have aspirations to provide software to as many nonprofits as we possibly can. And what that universe looks like for us is somewhere around 4 to 5 million nonprofit organizations around the world. So that is our aim. That's one of the things that we're striving for. We're trying to do that in an accelerated amount of time. And it brings me to another, bullet that I'd like to throw out at you real quick. Microsoft works almost exclusively with partners to engage customers. And it's one of the reasons why we're so passionate about the relationship that we have with SparkRock. SparkRock has been a fantastic partner for us to align with on our Dynamics suite of software. And there are a couple of things that customers can benefit from when working with partners in Microsoft partner ecosystem. Number one, you can take advantage of the expertise that partners provide to customers. That's one of the biggest benefits of customers working directly with partners. Microsoft goes through a rash of changes each year in terms of refreshing their products. And our partners have the ability to keep pace with those changes and relay that information to our customers. The second benefit of working with a partner, a Microsoft partner specifically, is that you can access those partners locally where you are. We have partners around the world, but chances are that you'll be able to find a partner in around proximity of your community. So that's one of the other reasons or benefits why it's it's worthwhile to work with a partner. And then the final reason is that you can gain invaluable access to not only the partner's expertise, but you can make sure that you stay up to date with the rapid pace of changes that are happening in the technology industry through your connections with your partner. And these are, all fantastic reasons for working directly with a Microsoft dedicated partner. But there are other reasons as well, and I'm sure you can think of quite a few yourself. And with that, hopefully you've gotten an overview of the solutions that Microsoft provides to nonprofit organizations, and you've gained some insight as to why it's beneficial to work with a partner, and hopefully you can take advantage of some of the offers that are available from Microsoft to eligible nonprofits. And with that, I'll turn it back over to Gary to talk more about Spark Rocks and their solutions.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you very much. I know that some of you might not be familiar with Microsoft. So with Spark Rocks, sorry. So I just want to give you a bit of background on who we are and what we do and how we partner with Microsoft. Spark Rock was created in 2003 and always at a very unique position from the beginning. From day one, we partnered with Microsoft and worked end to end with them as part of the Microsoft Embedded program. When most people think about Microsoft, they do not think about ERP. But as many of you may know, Microsoft has been in the ERP business for over 30 years. And as Microsoft evolved over the years through technology and innovation, so did we. Today, we are built on top of Microsoft ERP cloud solution called Microsoft Business Central, which is a very robust and proven ERP solution meant specifically for for-profit organization. And I'm sure that many of you are familiar with it. So what we find with our experience is that when you work with nonprofit and human services organization, is that Business Central, like any other solution that are made specifically for for-profit organization, are missing key functionalities that organizations like yours really need. So there are requirements around invoice approval, around managing fund, around grant accounting, around generating specific report, complex regulatory reports that you have and that do not exist for for-profit organization. And non-for-profit organizations that are using those tools that were specifically designed for businesses end up wasting a lot of time and resources and having to implement a lot of manual processes, which is very detrimental for the organization, but also could impact the ability to better focus on their mission. Before Spark Rock came along, non-for-profit organization had pretty much the choice between well-established solution designed specifically for businesses. And as we just discussed, this is less than ideal, or niche ERP solution built for nonprofit and that unfortunately are not as robust or as well developed as a solution available for businesses. And worse, they lack the stability and security that larger organizations could offer. With Spark Rock, what we do is that we bring together in one side all the security and the stability of the Microsoft infrastructure, and on the other side, the sector-specific expertise of Spark Rock, with all the features and functionality that are specific to the need of non-for-profit organization. So really what we are is the best of both worlds. What we bring to the table is our capacity to leverage Microsoft investment in Business Central. And this is really significant. Not only because it's cloud, but also because you're benefiting from all the privacy and security investment. And as you know, Microsoft make ongoing investment, not just in the features and functionalities, but again, in the privacy, in the security, in the mobility support, in the interoperability within the Microsoft environment and Microsoft ecosystem. And I have to say that Microsoft is doing a pretty impressive job, right? So in this webinar, all of us here are all Microsoft users, right? We all Microsoft Office users, team users, and Microsoft plays a very big role in our everyday work experience. And you will see when James get to the demo how the application works and integrates with the Microsoft Teams, with Outlook, and the whole Office 365 suite. So not only we leverage all the Microsoft resources and all the Microsoft investment, but then on top of that, we are offering vertical specific functionalities that were developed through 20 years of investment and experience in this space. I am very confident when I say that SparkRock is designed to meet non-for-profit organization expectation in a way that no other out-of-the-box solution in the market can today. And this is one of the reasons why many organizations all across the US and Canada have decided to choose us and trust us as their partner. On the screen right now, you can see a few of them that are part of our customer community, and you're probably familiar with some of them. But just to name a few, we have Hilltop People First, that is focused on serving youth, families, and seniors, or organizations such as Rehoboth, which serves and empowers people with disability. And as you can imagine, we are very proud and privileged to work with all those organizations and help them focus on their mission. So now that you have a better idea of who we are and what we do, I want to introduce you to James Farr. James is actually our senior product consultant at SparkRock. So James, the floor is now yours.
Thank you very much, Gary, and good afternoon, everybody. My name is James Farr, and I've been working with nonprofit organizations for over 25 years, helping them make business technology decisions. I've worked with implementation teams, with product teams, with support teams, and now primarily focused with evaluation teams where they're evaluating the fit of software for their organization. So today we want to be covering several key themes that we have seen make a really big difference for organizations such as yours in terms of helping increase productivity and reduce risk. So we're going to touch on these four themes that you see here. The idea of safeguarding data and auditors' peace of mind, enhancing employee experience, simplifying operations, and making meaning out of data. So we'll touch on each one of those, talk about the importance and how the kinds of things that you'll want to consider when evaluating these specific areas. Okay, so let's kick off with our first theme, which is cloud and SaaS safeguarding data and auditors' peace of mind. So the challenge really is in today's cybersecurity environment, organizations like yours are, often facing increased pressures to reduce technical risk. So a significant area of that technical risk is often older applications running on premises where, maybe they're not being maintained or updated with all the security patches as soon as they're released, right? Because especially on-premise software, that tends to be more expensive or more disruptive to go through sort of an upgrade cycle, right? And all of the testing and all of the components that go through that upgrade cycle. Maintaining hardware and keeping it up to date in terms of security patches and performance, that's costly. Procuring new hardware, procuring parts, when to replace that server, those kinds of things are really things that are distracting to an organization and disruptive. Applying operating system patches, right? Making sure that those are up to date, monitoring those if you have a lot of infrastructure, and that can be challenging as well. And then upgrading software itself to the latest version is often a real challenge. So what really matters in terms of making a change and de-risking this is that the applications that you consider for your organization are truly cloud and SaaS applications, right? These are the things that are going to make the biggest difference in reducing this kind of risk. So cloud, for example, just to go through a little bit of definition, is an app that's run and maintained by the cloud provider in the cloud. So, we're really eliminating all of the infrastructure requirements, servers, new parts for servers, monitoring that disk array and making sure that, a disk isn't malfunctioning or, those kinds of data risks. All of that goes away, and that is all in the hands of the cloud provider, and they have all of the redundancies in place to make sure that those risks are, eliminated or significantly reduced. And then SaaS is the other definition I wanted to clarify, and that's really software, the application itself delivered as a service, where you're not needing to worry about application security patches, updates to the application. It's really evergreen software that's being continually updated. The providers, like Microsoft, are updating the application with security patches to make sure that as soon as there is any kind of concerns, is being addressed quickly. So, and if you consider the comparison to older legacy software that may be on premise, where maybe at best it's being upgraded, on a 2-year cycle, that's a long time for your organization to have to be at risk, right? If you're on those older pieces of technology. So again, considering a true cloud and SaaS is really going to dramatically reduce or eliminate the risks that perhaps your auditors are asking about, or board members are asking about, or even perhaps funders are asking you about. So another aspect of this sort of technology risk is also application security and the data management, data risk. So aside from all of the technical risk, where something might just go down or a server may malfunction or something like that, or those kinds of challenges, there are security risks with data breaches and things like that. And so again, transferring the relationship away from, the small team that a typical nonprofit organization can have in IT into the secure hands of an organization like Microsoft, which has literally thousands of employees that are dedicated to security and maintaining, addressing these data risks is going to be a huge step for organizations. And so when we're talking about the data risk, there's a couple of different components that I just want to touch on here. So if you're evaluating or considering your options, these are sort of the check boxes that you're going to want to consider. The first is data residency. So all of our customers or most of our customers are in North America. So considering, whether you're a US-based client or a Canadian-based client, each often funders or donors or there may be even some regulatory requirements that will require that your data is stored on your soil. So considering those aspects is really important to look at. A few other aspects are around data encryption. So for example, there's this concept of data being encrypted at rest. So if a database has all of your data in it, we want to make sure that if someone is able to get access to that database level, they can't read that data is there. So again, in applications, a true cloud and SaaS application, all of your data is always encrypted at rest. Secure transactions is talking about data that's encrypted in transit. So as it transits between the user's machine and where it's stored. So again, those are all there as well, making sure that encryption is in place. And then the last two, data compliance and routine security audits, are just making sure that again, often we see funders may have specific requirements buried in their terms and conditions around data compliance, right? So those are things to look at and to consider, and the compliance usually are proven out by the routine security audit. So we are seeing more and more customers, auditors, asking for SOC compliance reports or bridging letters and things like that. And again, unless you have an application that's running in a business grade technology in the cloud, that may be challenging. So again, these are some of the tick boxes to consider when it comes to both your technical and IT risk as well as data risk. Okay, so I want to shift to the next theme or second theme, which is really around enhancing the employee experience. So another challenge that we've come across with efficiencies is really business technologies that organizations like yours are using that are really complex, right? All of our organizations, they're really needing to achieve a lot of very complex things. The way nonprofits are funded are often through lots of smaller pots of funding that need to be managed very carefully, and you need to make sure you prove to your funders the flow of those expenses through every place that it touches in your business operations. And so those tend to be more complex things. And if we're working with a technology stack that is not easy to use, and that kind of detailed analysis all the way through can be very, very challenging. Another aspect that's coming into is really the changing demographic in the workforce, right? So if you're looking to attract a new generation in terms of workforce in your organization, they may not be as willing to work with older technologies than perhaps existing employees that are there. So again, this is something to keep in mind, and something that we see as a growing motivating factor as organizations look at their technology stack. So I want to talk a little bit and show you some examples of how an amazing technology stack from Microsoft, can really empower usability and efficiency within the organization. So I'm actually going to flip over to the application now. So this is SparkRock 365. So this is the ERP application built on top of the Microsoft Dynamics Business Central platform. And it has built in many different features that will meet the needs of our market sector. I'm going to focus right now on some of those usability features, right? So if we look at the application here, let's say that my manager has asked me to do some quick analysis. So I'm going to go to my vendor list here, and I've received, maybe a message or maybe a verbal conversation saying, hey, please send me a list of all of the vendors that we spent over $500 with in the last fiscal year. So I'm going to quickly try to find that data and get that data to my manager as quickly as possible, right? So I can do that in this in SparkRock 365 by using a feature called filtering. So I can open up this filter panel here, and I can apply a filter. I'm going to search for a field called purchases. This is a field that shows me the total amount that we spent with this vendor, and I'm just going to type in greater than 500. So now it's giving me a list of all of my vendors that we spent greater than $500 with, but this is in perpetuity, right? So the request was last fiscal year. So I'm going to go in here, and I'm just going to use the calendar year. Here, oops, should be January here. And apply the date filter, and now it's applied that calendar year or fiscal year, could be any starting date or any ending date, right? So this is now I've been able to apply this quick filter here, and now this is where we get into some of the real brilliance of this Business Central platform, and really how Microsoft is blurring the lines of how we work with other productivity solutions. So right from here, so let's say my organization uses Teams. So I'm going to send it off. I can actually just use the Share in Teams feature here, and I can send it off to my manager directly from here, and it'll send a live link to that individual right from here. So I can, just type it in. I'm going to send it to Sherry Hashimoto here, and you can see it's going to send a link to the vendor list here with that filter applied. So that would be really great because it's going to declutter our inboxes. We're not going to have all these things that are downloaded into email, right? So that's one way of interacting with the software. Another way is maybe I need a spreadsheet, so I can actually just simply use the open in Excel, and it's just going to download that list directly into Excel for me, which is again useful if I need to work on it in Excel or outside of the system. That's kind of a nice feature. But really getting into some of the really interesting scenarios is, so let's say my manager would like me to update the status on all of these. So I can use a feature called Edit in Excel. And that's a feature where I can make changes to all of this data. And it actually downloads into Excel a live list of that data here. right into the system and allows me to make those changes, right? So I have a list of all of those vendors here, and maybe if I want to update something, maybe a status or some other field, these are all of the fields that are in here. Maybe I want to reassign all of these vendors to a specific purchaser or buyer. I can do that right here, and then I can publish those changes and it'll write them right back into the application. So again, these are really some transformational changes that are built right into the platform that help me work very efficiently. And perhaps even further, maybe I want to send an email out to each one of these, thanking them, or providing them with some sort of update to terms and conditions. Well, I can actually use the send email feature and use another very useful integration, which is the integration to Microsoft Word, where I can have letter templates or any kind of form and merge data right into the application. So you can see it saved me a lot of time simply by merging in that data and putting in the name of the company, contact name, all of that information. So again, some other tools that I can do with this functionality. I also want to show you how the efficiency is available from inside other applications. So again, as Brian and Gary talked about, there's this deep integration across the Microsoft platform, and Microsoft is doing a great job of really helping organizations get access to these productivity suite applications. So another feature that's available is the ability to install a SparkRock 365 add-in into Outlook. And so, for example, if I'm interacting with a email that's come into my inbox and it's linked to either a customer or a vendor in my financial system, when I do that, it opens up this window over here and gives me some access. Now I have multiple companies, so it's saying, hey, which company do you want to look it up for? So I'll just pick this generic one. And when I do that, it's providing me with live real-time data about this particular vendor or customer or funder, right? Inside my ERP system. So this is the current balance, which I can drill down to find out, we owe a lot of money to this particular vendor, so might be something to look at, or maybe a history of information or adding a new note. And this is really interacting with my ERP system without ever having left my ERP system. So truly modern way of working with the application. So another area that I want to touch on that really helps improve this is moving away from this blurring the lines between the productivity suite and the financial system. And that's really this idea of personalization. And so SparkRock 365, for example, comes with many different role centers, and that's a dashboard that is specific to a particular type of user, right? So we come with a whole bunch of out-of-the-box role centers, but each individual user, or even a user on behalf, like a super user in the organization, can actually modify what those role centers look like. So this role center is showing me some really important information. It's a finance-related role center here, but maybe I want to turn some of these things off, so I can hide that, or I can move it around, or I can drag this particular section up to the top here, right? So that can help me become more efficient over time as I personalize the system and reduce the data the information that's being seen to target exactly what I need to see to do my job the best. Then that is something, that's where the application is becoming more efficient over time for me. And then on top of all of that, just speaking to sort of the, different generations in the workforce today, we really need to speak their language, right? And so there's definitely the digital natives that are in the organization now that have been working with technology since they were born, right? And their expectations are much higher. And so if they want to work, for example, with a tablet interface, we can see what that looks like, or a mobile interface, we can see what that looks like as well. And again, what we're seeing essentially is where users are often using more than one interface at the same time, right? You're working in the system on a reconciliation, you received a notice of an approval that's required. Instead of sort of, maybe losing your train of thought in the desktop user experience, you could actually switch over to the mobile user experience, review that, approve or reject that transaction directly from the mobile. So again, these are tools that perhaps may seem simpler individually, but collectively we have seen them generate a significant boost in productivity and really help speak the language of different generations of individuals that may be working with your financial data or with your business data in the organization today. Okay, so I want to move into the all-in-one solution and simplifying operations, our third theme for today. So, the challenge that you may be feeling as exemplified in this image here is really, we are seeing that, especially finance teams, they seem to be the ones that end up sort of picking up a lot of the loose ends. But if you think of your business operations as depending on many, many different systems. And the challenge is really having those many different systems speak to each other. It can be really inefficient. It can be really challenging, especially when it comes to things like the same data showing up in multiple places. So for example, if you're using, let's say, a financial or an accounting system, and perhaps maybe you have some other tool for requisitions. In some cases, it might even be a fillable form or something like that, or a spreadsheet, or it might be a different application, procurement application, right? And then there might be an approval process that you have, or approval tools, or different reporting tools, often Excel, or an HR system, or a payroll and a separate payroll system, or timekeeping tools, or scheduling tools. If you think of all of those tools, there's at least one set of things that are really important to be synchronized across all of those. And those are things like your cost centers, departments, your accounting categorizations that are needed, right? Those are things that are required throughout the application. And when you need to rely on someone or a process, or frankly, even in many different APIs to synchronize all that data, that creates significant data risk, and it creates significant inefficiencies in terms of reconciliations across the organization. Again, we're seeing in most cases that burden falls on the finance team, or in some cases, some folks in the IT team, to really try to sort out and sift through all of those challenges. So again, that can create a lot of inefficiencies and frustrations. Really, there are significant benefits to moving to a solution where you get as many of those components in a single provider as possible, right? Having a single fully integrated system for the core components can be really transformational in terms of efficiencies, in terms of eliminating that reconciliation, time and effort and risk, and making sure that the information is really not siloed in different departments, applications, right? It's really shared across the organization. And so again, having that fully integrated solution can be a tremendous benefit for organizations. And that can range from not only the data risks we've been talking to, but in terms of a single organization or a much smaller number of organizations to contact for support, or a single user interface for people to get used to. So it's easier to transfer from one module to another and understand the application. So there's many benefits for having that. And so we wanted to just touch on a little bit around SparkRock 365. So this is a fully single integrated solution where all of these pieces are working and talking to each other without any effort whatsoever. It is the same solution. And so, a typical scenario for an organization like yours would be things like project and grant accounting. So let's say we're using that for maybe a new grant application that we're looking, some new funding that we're looking for. We use it for pre-award tracking. At the moment that we find out, we get that award letter that grant has been awarded, it automatically creates in SparkRock 365 the values in the general ledger for that new cost center or that new grant code that's going to be needed, right? So we can see now where that data is transferring from here all the way into here. Now, once that's set up, then that becomes immediately available. So let's say this is a grant where we're procuring some new equipment or supplies for a new program or something like that. Well, it's immediately available, for example, for requisition management, which then feeds into commitments and encumbrances, right? And that will flow into purchasing. We have integrated end user reporting, so we can simply assign managers for that grant, and then they'll be able to monitor the budget to actual, right? That as we go along in real time. So again, that's a tremendous advantage for having all of those pieces talk to each other, all the way as it flows to accounts payable, purchasing. Some other scenarios, well, let's say that this particular grant is funding maybe travel or some other services in the organization. And so perhaps through expense claims or P cards, again, there's tremendous value of having that information synchronized from here. It's set up immediately. We can already, user can start categorizing the expenses. And then on top of that, let's say that we're building up some new positions. So it also synchronizes into new position management. So we can set up a position that we're going to hire into of individuals that are working in that particular role, or perhaps maybe they'll just be entering time. So through time clock or time entry, they'll be categorizing their time to that new cost center, that new grant code. Or maybe we're scheduling staff to work on it. And again, we want to categorize those to those cost centers, which are then going to flow into payroll administration, which then flow back into the GL and are available through the end user reporting. So I know this is a lot of information, but hopefully you're getting a sense of how valuable it is to have all of these pieces talking to each other. And again, in the scenarios that we see where organizations are really sort of piecing together these pieces of functionality through 4, 5, 6 or more applications, that really becomes a risk to the organization and generates a lot of inefficiencies. So wanted to start out by laying the groundwork in terms of having you understand the value of that fully integrated financial management solution. Now, something else to consider is that we know many of you are familiar with Dynamics 365 Business Central, so the platform upon which SparkRock 365 is built. And so we wanted to start off with this, the view of the full capability of a SparkRock 365 can do for an organization, but we also want to help you understand a little bit about what we found in that platform. So from our experience, the Business Central platform is an amazing platform from a usability and from a technology stack perspective, the integration with the ecosystem. However, its functionality was really primarily developed for the for-profit world. And in our experience, many of those features are useful for some of our customer base, but really the sophistication of the application is really a little bit upside down from what's needed from our application, right? We see a lot of the sophistication in sales, in inventory, in making inventory through either production or through warehouse management, buying and selling it, you know, those kinds of things. What our customers need is an equivalent level of sophistication on the cost side. So managing those cost centers, who has access to them, the requisition to payment cycle, making sure all of those are very, very clear. And then the cost side on the staffing side as well. So with that, we wanted to just highlight some of the areas that are different. So if we start to consider the overall footprint of what SparkRock 365 can do, these are areas that we've made only minor enhancements to the Business Central platform. So things like accounts receivable, inventory, and cash management. There's really only some enhancements made to that platform. Some of these other areas are areas that exist in that platform. However, we've expanded them significantly in order to meet the requirements of our nonprofit clients. So general ledger, purchasing, accounts payable, fixed assets, budget management, employee and absence and leave management, right? And then the last section, these are areas that didn't exist at all in the Business Central platform, right? So these are completely net new modules or areas that really fill out the picture of what SparkRock 365 can do for your organization. So just to help you understand how those relate to the Business Central platform. Okay, so I want to move into our fourth and final theme for today, and that's making meaning out of data. And that's, again, leveraging some of the really, really transformational work that Microsoft has done in democratizing access to solutions that can really help transform an organization. So Power BI is another tool from Microsoft that really has gone from quite a few years ago being a very, very expensive, only for the largest organizations type of tool. And Microsoft has done an amazing job of making it accessible for many organizations. And it allows organizations to not only visualize pretty much any kind of data, but it can also function like a universal connector between different areas of your business. So for example, if you have a client management or a student management system or a fundraising system or something like that, that's sort of secondary to your core business operations, but there's tremendous value in looking at the intersectionality between some of that data. Power BI is an amazing tool that can allow you to do that, right? It can help you look at, maybe outcome data from your patients compared to cost expenditures that you're applying, right? And so those might be pulled from different systems. So I want to just move over to SparkRock 365 again and talk about how this is deeply integrated. So Power BI is deeply integrated into the Business Central platform. So if I go back here to my role center, there's bi-directional integration. So meaning we can set up the connectors to Power BI so the data is seamlessly connecting into Power BI, but also we can see the data in Power BI or present Power BI dashboards back into SparkRock 365. So this is my Power BI window here or section here, and these are live Power BI dashboards that I can see here. I can click on these and interact with these. Now I know these are pretty small, so I'll just expand it out here so you can see more. And again, these are some examples that are fairly financial in nature, but you can see, for example, how I can present this data graphically here, financial data or any kind of data here. We've seen some of our customers do some truly innovative things and leverage data in Power BI for all kinds of scenarios, including scenarios like grant applications, where in many cases you can download either low cost or no cost data sets from public data sources, perhaps demographic data or something like that. And those can be leveraged in grant applications, right? Where you can go to a funder and say, hey, look at these are the kinds of things that we've been able to do with the funding you gave us last year. Here's this secondary demographic that's very close geographically or very similar. This is what we could do with even more funding if you were to provide it to our organization. So again, there's examples of those kinds of things that are available and that you can do with Power BI in SparkRock 365, as well as with data outside of SparkRock 365 in other applications. So I know that's very quick look at some of those tools. I'm just going to go back here to our slides. So just to quickly summarize these themes, true cloud and SaaS models can dramatically reduce the technological, cybersecurity, and data risks that your organization may be facing today, right? So if you're evaluating systems or transition, this is something that's really critical and is only going to become more critical, right? The second theme is really moving to a highly usable solution that can adapt to the needs of your diverse workforce, and that being really critical to make sure that you're generating the efficiencies that your organization needs and your funders are really, insisting. The third is the all-in-one solution, simplifying operations by consolidating multiple applications in your tech ecosystem and moving away from poor integration or manual integration to really generate that single cohesive user experience and a consistent data, no matter what department is looking at the data. So again, that can be tremendously transformative to an organization. And then finally, making meaning out of data. So many organizations are so focused on meticulously collecting all of that data, right? And our organizations, nonprofit organizations like yours, have a higher than usual requirement for managing very small bits and pieces of funding as they flow through the organization. And so using these amazing tools that Microsoft provides to create dashboards that make meaning out of those mountains of data that you have is critical to help with data-driven business decision making. All right. So we also wanted to provide you with a quick tool that can help trigger perhaps some internal conversations or maybe help formalize some discussions that you may have in your organization around where your organization sits from a technology risk perspective. So we know that everybody's on a journey in terms of either digital transformation or technology risks. And so we wanted to provide you with a tool that would perhaps help you assess where you're at and perhaps drive maybe some conversations at your organization. And so look for a link that will be in the presentation that we'll provide to you. And it's a really simple and pragmatic tool. You can follow the instructions right in the technology risk assessment here. So for example, here, how many different systems do you use for these areas? Give 1 point for each out of 6, for example. And so you would give your score. Let's say you have 3 different systems, would be 3 out of 6 here. Would be the score. Or how many of this are on premise or hosted by your IT? Let's say 1 of those, you give yourself 2 points for that, or more here, and then and then you add up the sheet will add up here to the total score, and then you can identify where you at, right? So 1 to 6, here's your current state, and we have some examples or some suggestions for next steps. 7 to 10, 30 to 48, right? If you have any issues with filling out this, then please feel free to contact us. We're happy to walk you through or help you fill out that technology risk assessment. Okay, so just before I hand it back over to you, Gary, and we are going to open it up for questions. So feel free, if you have any questions, to type them into the chat box, or the chat window. But just a quick plug for our next webinar is we're going to have a similar webinar focusing on themes specifically for the finance team. So finance features to overcome industry challenges. And we'll talk about, again, 4 more themes here that we think will be valuable to you. All right, so I'm going to hand it over to you, Gary.
All right, thank you, James. And now it's time for Q&A session. And as James mentioned, if you haven't done so yet, please ask your question using the Q&A on the top right of your console. And we actually already have a few questions in the chat. And the first question I have here is actually for you, James. James, you mentioned the importance of data sovereignty and geo-redundancy. Can you provide some practical example of how these aspects have benefited nonprofit organizations in terms of data security and compliance?
Okay, that's a good question. That's a fairly deep question, so that's good. So actually, where we've seen this matter the most is often where you have specific streams of funding, and often the funder will embed geo-redundancy requirements into the funding stream. So again, it seems it's quite regional. So certain jurisdictions, there are funding, especially if it's coming from the public sector. There are funding strings attached that say your data must not leave this particular soil in this particular jurisdiction. So that's probably where we're seeing that kind of where that's coming up more. So the geo-redundancy is the first, sorry, the data sovereignty, sorry, that's to the data sovereignty question. In terms of geo-redundancy, that's this idea where, again, with a business critical application, you want to have that data managed with a failover in a different physical location. So again, if you think of your on-premise applications, that there's a server room, or maybe it's hosted somewhere, it's running in one building. But if something happens to, let's say, the power in that building, or all of the electricity connections, even if there's some redundancy, if there's something fairly disruptive happened, then that could be very problematic to the organization. So geo-redundancy is the idea that at the same time that you're entering data and it's stored in one place, it's almost in real time being synchronized to another geolocation, and the platform is such that it'll roll over from one location to the other. So again, a pretty important feature. Maybe not something that you're going to think about every day, but it will be important at the time that you need it, right? If something ever happens, and that's really critical. And most organizations that are just running their IT infrastructure on their own would never be able to set up the structure to do that, right? So it's a huge benefit to have that managed by an organization like Microsoft that has all the infrastructure in place to make that easy and straightforward. The other area we're seeing those things be important is really on technology audits. So if your organization is undergoing a technology audit, I can almost guarantee you that those are the kinds of questions that are going to be asked of your organization, especially about your business critical applications. So those are the things that they're going to audit and ask about. and you want to get ahead of that if you want to avoid audit findings in that area. So hopefully that's a very long answer, but hopefully that answers that question.
All right, thanks, James. The second question that we have is actually for you as well. Could you elaborate on how integrating with Azure AD and Office Outlook can enhance user experience? And are there any specific customization options available for nonprofit organizations that might have unique needs?
Great. Okay, so two questions. One was the single sign-on, right? The Azure AD.
Right.
Yeah, so another compliance question. So this will show up on an IT audit as well. So for business applications, really the best practice is single sign-on, really, and that's to protect your data and your client's data, right, in your infrastructure. If someone leaves the organization abruptly, we really want to make sure that we can go to one place. IT can disable their account and it'll turn off access in all the different areas. And so that's probably, there's a practical one where users don't have to learn a separate password to log into SparkRock 365, for example. But there's also the security concern where, again, your IT can turn off access to a particular user if that's warranted. And they just do it once. As soon as they disable that account, then data in all the business critical areas is disabled all at once. So you know, there's the two sides, the practical, the usability side, as well as the technical side. And then the other question to the customization. So I will say that our product team focuses and we work closely with our user community and with multiple methods for providing product feedback and ideas to really focus on creating an application that doesn't require customizations for our customers. However, in some cases, you still may have some unique requirements. Maybe there's some, you know, a Connect app that you need for some unique application that's unique to your scenario, your organization, or maybe one of your funders. And so we do have tools that are built right into the platform where we can create extensions. And these are essentially customizations to the platform that don't impact your ability to rapidly upgrade, right? To receive those monthly updates or security patches on a frequent basis. So these are all part of a mature cloud and SaaS infrastructure in place. And so you can when needed. However, our team is really focused on helping reduce customizations. That's always a goal. We want to eliminate customizations whenever possible, but in the event that it's not avoidable, then we do have the proper infrastructure to deliver that to your organization.
Yeah, thanks, James. Next question we have goes actually to you, Brian. How can customers access discounted and free software from Microsoft?
Great question, Gary, and thank you for asking that. The easiest way is to simply visit the Microsoft Nonprofit Hub, and we'll provide the link to that so that you can access that link and it'll take you directly there. Now, there is an eligibility process that Microsoft requires all nonprofits to go through in order to be eligible to receive the discounted and granted software. But once that eligibility process is complete, then you're free to access, solutions from Modern Work, Dynamics, Azure, or Power BI, or any of the other commercially available Microsoft solutions available that we make available to nonprofits.
Thank you, Brian. Last question that we have actually on the chat here is, could you highlight how your solution addresses the financial management challenge that nonprofit organizations often face? I'm actually going to take on that one. That's a very good question. So there are several financial challenges that non-for-profit organization faces and that are common to non-for-profit organization. And one of the first things that come to mind is around budget limitation, right? So non-for-profit deal with very tight budget. So they need to be very mindful of how they use it and how to pretty much do more with less, right? Also challenge around resource allocation, the need to prioritize activities that align with their mission while still ensuring financial sustainability. Also, a couple of challenges that come to mind is in terms of maintaining financial transparency, compliance, and reporting, right? This is really critical because you want to build trust trust, with donors, board members, vendors, and there are also a complex regulatory reporting that are required and that they need to comply with. And all those challenges can be solved with SparkRock. And it is actually a very good segue to talk about our next webinar that will happen on September 26th, and that James already mentioned. So if you want to know more about how SparkRock solves those financial challenges, please make sure to join our next webinar. All right, so I want to thank you all very much for joining. It was a real pleasure to have you all with us. I hope this was very useful and give you a good starting point. We really hope to continue the conversation and chat further with you. As mentioned in the introduction, we will be sharing the recording with all of you. So please feel free to share it with other members of the organization that were maybe not be able to attend the webinar. If you need more information, or if any question that were not covered during the webinar, or if you want to discuss further your needs and requirements, please reach out to us at connect@sparkrock.com. Our team will be happy to assist. Once again, connect@sparkrock.com. And as mentioned, we will have our next webinar on the 26th, and we are looking forward to see all of you there. Thank you again for joining, and enjoy the rest of your day.